E.2, JavaScript Basics, Part 1. We need to learn a lot of basic knowledge of JavaScript before we can do programming. Yeah. So for this part, we will focus on that part. So we will have 3 parts, 3 videos for the JavaScript basics, 1, 2, 3. But each one should be relatively short, 10-something minutes. All right. First, we want to look at how to add JavaScript to HTML document. Yeah. So pretty simple. Yeah. We just use script tags. Yeah. Open, closing script tags. So straightforward. Yeah. Just look at one simple example. Yeah. So in this example, we want to add JavaScript statement. One JavaScript statement. Yeah. Because this line is too long, so I have to break it somewhere in the middle. Yeah. But ends up with semicolon. End of script. Yeah. Here you can see the syntax slightly close to Java syntax. Yeah. So we will feel quite familiar with the syntax. Yeah. Document object. Here we will use document object a lot. So it has many methods we can use. Here we use the get element by ID. So you know the meaning of this method. We want to get a control of an HTML element by ID. We use the ID of that element to get a control of that particular element. What ID? The string in the parameter, okay, demo. Then after we get a control, we want to access its inner HTML property. Okay, so the property we want to access is called inner HTML. Yeah. Here I need to give you that element so you can understand better. So the element, we need to have an HTML element. Here I use this span. Okay, span. Yeah. I mentioned a little bit in CSS, right? Yeah, but I didn't talk much about it. Yeah, span. It is an inline element. If we want to add one special text content inline, anywhere in your text body, so we use the span element. Yeah. The block div, if we want to add some special element as a block element, we use the div. So span and the div, 2 different types of elements, but they are very similar. So these two, very, from the behavior point of view, very similar, but the type different. One inline, one block. Yeah. All right. Here we use the span element, and we give it ID the same as the one we want to control it. Okay. ID is unique, so we control only this element. No other element. We don't want to control other elements, only this element. Then, when you set the inner HTML, case sensitive, this property, inner capital HTML, case sensitive, you want to set this property new content, my first JavaScript. So you replace the content of the element. Yeah. So we replace this initial text by my first JavaScript. That simple. Okay? So the logic is that simple, straightforward. Yeah. Here, through this simple example, here you already know how to change the content in HTML. Most of the content change we do in this way. Okay? So you can see most HTML content change we do in this way. Okay, so that's simple. Yeah. All right. Yeah. Next, for old JavaScript, when people do things like this, people use the script but add a type attribute. Add type attribute. So here we talk about old. That means the current JavaScript, people drop this part. Why you need to include that part? Redundant. But the old, people always use this attribute. Why? The reason is very simple. The reason is very simple. Okay, so I'll explain the reason. Yeah. The type attribute is not required, so you can skip it. JavaScript is the default scripting language in HTML. Now let me explain why old JavaScript use this, but new, we do not. Old, yeah. At the beginning, at the early time of JavaScript, so when people use it inside web browser, people did not know if there are other scripting languages the browser need to support. If there are other scripting languages like JavaScript, right? Microsoft JavaScript, other than their browser, other than supporting JavaScript, they also need to support JavaScript, Microsoft JavaScript, right? And then Microsoft has another script, VB script, Visual Basic, VB script, right? You know, and people also think about there is some possibilities other teams could develop some more advanced scripting language, client-side scripting language. Yeah. So the designer keep that door open, open, so ready for other scripting languages. Yeah. So that's why they use this type attribute, open for other scripting languages. So you can put the values, other scripting languages. Okay. Yeah. All right. But now, after 20-something years, right? 20-something years, no other players. So right now, only JavaScript is the only player doing the client-side scripting. Okay? No other players can be considered. Okay? So that's why the current JavaScript, they just drop it. They never use it. Why include it? Okay? So that's the background of this attribute. Yeah. So you won't see it anymore. Yeah. All right. You can place any number of scripts in an HTML document. So you have the freedom. So whenever you need it, you just embed that, script tag anywhere you like to place. Just put there. Put a few lines of JavaScript code. Okay, yeah. All right. And scripts can be placed in the body tag, body part, or head section. Yeah. All right, yeah. Any way you like. Yeah, but most of the time, people like to put in the head section. Yeah. Place scripts at the bottom of the body. Yeah, so there is another situation. People like, suppose you have the, long document, right? Long document. So then some programmers, they like to put the JavaScript at the bottom of the page, at the end of the page. So their argument is like this. Yeah. Their argument makes sense. So this is their argument. Okay. Yeah. Improves display speed. Why? This way can improve display. because the browser will render the page using the HTML portion. At the end, load the JavaScript code. Okay, so at the end, load JavaScript code in this part. Okay, but when the browser takes time loading this block of code, users already see the content of the page. So you will see the content of the page faster. So that's their argument. Okay. Compare if you put this block of code at the header part. This head section. Okay, this head section. So you need to load this block of code first, right? So it takes some time, right? Then display the content. So the display speed will be a little slower. So that's the argument. Okay, all right. But the situation is quite different right now. Okay, right now, most of the programmers, they like to put JavaScript code in the head section because more convenient to use. Although it's okay put at the bottom, still there are some programmers they put at the bottom. But most of the web programs like to put at the header section. The reason is also very simple. It's true there is some display speed difference, but that difference is extremely small. You cannot notice that difference. Because right now our computer is very powerful. Display a page with JavaScript so fast. Nobody can notice that difference. So this way, typically the older time, the computer relatively slow. The internet also very slow, right? The internet, the bandwidth also slow. So everything relatively slow, so people want to save time and using this way. But currently, so fast. Every step is so fast. So then people don't worry about that small time difference. Probably in milliseconds. Okay, the difference could be in milliseconds. So why you still want to do something? Just the difference is milliseconds, right? So you just want to do something that make you feel comfortable. So this way, make most programmers feel more comfortable. So they do this way. All right. So that's the story. Next, external JavaScript. I mentioned that a little bit in the first video, but here we need to go through the details. So the advantages using external JavaScript. Here, it gives us one advantage. Same code used in many different web pages. In one website, we have many web pages. Some of the JavaScript functions could be used by many different pages. Okay? So for that situation, if we include as an external file, okay, at the head section, so when you visit the first page, it is loaded. When you visit the second page, that JavaScript file is buffered in the cache of the web browser. So you do not need to load it the second time. It saves your time, right? So with this property, you can see put at the bottom, top, is there any difference? Only for the first page, there is some difference, but that difference is so tiny, right? After the first page, the remaining, you do not need to load JavaScript file another time, right? So no difference. So that is one reason. Okay. Although there are some other reasons. I can say especially when you have large number of JavaScript functions. You don't want to put it inside your HTML file. Large number, think about it, you have hundreds of JavaScript functions. Do you want to put it at the header section part of your HTML? You don't. Yeah. So you put it in an external file. All right. So then JavaScript file have the file extension .js. Yeah. So that's very obvious, the .js. Yeah. So the browser will interpret it as a JavaScript with this .js. Yeah. Load it and interpret it. Yeah. All right. How to use an external script? So very simple. We still use the script tag, but we use this source attribute. Then you provide the external file name. Yeah. Sometimes people want to put a JavaScript in a JS folder. Okay, JS folder. In the JS folder, you may have multiple JavaScript files. Yeah. So here, when you want to access one file inside JS folder, so you just use JS/my_script. Yeah, .js. Okay, so that's simple. Yeah. Yeah. Okay. All right. So that's another way. Yeah. Later we will see we can put a URL here. URL. So we can put a JavaScript not in our local directory on internet. So from web, from some location on web. Yeah. So we can also do that. Yeah. We will see that at the end of this slide. Yeah. All right. Yeah. So you have freedom to choose where to place it. Yeah. But the most common place, that part. Yeah. That part. Yeah. All right. The script will behave as if it was located exactly where, yeah, so the place you put, yeah. So, yeah. But usually, when you have external files, basically those files contain a list of JavaScript functions. Okay? The JavaScript functions, usually how do people use those functions? When people click a button, click a link, people do some action, the action will trigger that function. So we just provide a list of functions. Most of the time, we do JavaScript in that way. A list of functions. For that reason, you just put the header section. Not necessarily if you put in the middle, buried somewhere very deep in your HTML document, it is hard to find it, right? Later, you may like to find, I want to find definition of one particular function. Where could I find it? You need to do the search, right? You need to do, Control F, you need to do the search. Still, you need to move many lines to get there. So it's not efficient. So definitely the best place, the header section and external file. Okay, so you can find those functions easily. Yeah. All right. Yeah, cannot contain another script tag. Yeah. So don't forget. So we never put, so in this way, we only put a list of function definitions inside external JavaScript files. We never put any script tags. Okay, yeah. Then to add script files, you can add multiple script files. Yeah, it's very common. Yeah, it's very common. Yeah, especially sometimes one external file, you want to put functions related to one particular block of business related features. Another external file for another different type of business related features. So you want to separate. Yeah. If you separate those files, it is very easy to maintain those files. Otherwise, when you have a huge file, very hard to maintain. Another reason you want to split into multiple JavaScript files, because, all right, so here, let me give you a special scenario so you can imagine the necessity using this way. Yeah. All right, suppose you have the HTML page doc1. In this doc1, you do not need to use all the JavaScript functions, right? So you just use the JavaScript function, like external files, JS1, JS5. Yeah, JS2. Yeah, anyway, yeah. Your doc2, you use JS2 and JS6, right? Yeah. So you have, after you split, then you can load only those external files that you really need. You do not need to load unnecessary JavaScript functions because this page never uses it. Why you need to load it? Okay? Yeah. So that's another reason people like to split into, blocks of JavaScript function groups based on their functionalities. Yeah. All right. Cached JavaScript files. So I mentioned that. Cached. Yeah. The first page, so you have this particular JavaScript external file. But second one, if you need to use the same external file, you do not need to load it again because the browser by default uses its cached version. Yeah. All right. Then the last point, we need to know external scripts can be referenced with full URL case. I mentioned that URL case. Yeah. Now we will see it, the URL. Okay. So this is the example. The source, we put a specific location from web, but that source should be the trusted source. If you do not trust, you don't want to use it. Okay? You may put some harmful code in your web pages. You don't want to do that. Okay? So the source should be trusted source. Yeah. So here we use the Google, jQuery. Yeah. So we feel, no problem. So we can use that. Yeah. In this way, we do not need to download the whole JavaScript code. If you want, you can download, right? So if you just put this URL in the web browser bar, hit enter, this JavaScript will be loaded. Then you can save to your local file. Then you do not need to, every time you use this URL to load it. You just use it from your local directory. Yeah. And this way, this is a commonly used way. Yeah. People call it this way, Google CDN, the CDN way. So what's that CDN? Yeah, here. Content Delivery Network. Yeah. Many organizations, they create their JavaScript technologies. Some of the technology could be very complicated, huge package. Okay? So they expose to outside community, to the community, using this CDN way. Yeah. So we will use through the URL they provided. Okay. Yeah. And for this class, there is one. Yeah. Here I haven't decided. I may like to display math symbols. Math symbols. to display math symbols, complicated math symbols, our HTML web browser does not have the internal support because it is extremely complicated. Okay, so currently the browser does not have good support for it. Yeah, its current support really bad. We don't want to use that. Yeah, so we need to use the external, the package to do it. We can do it through CDN. Yeah, so the package name is called MathJax. MathJax. Yeah, that package is huge, really big. Yeah. You know, a couple of years ago, I downloaded 300 megabyte. I don't know right now how large it is, but in that category, okay, 300 MB. Such a big one, why you need to download it, right? So for that reason, when we want to use it, we use the CDN version. Okay, more convenient, easier, right? So I may like to use it, all right? So in one of our programming projects, I may use this MathJax CDN. Yeah. All right, so we complete our second video.